a car park.
Isn't it also a fact, I mean, even just from where we're standing now, you can actually see Minden Place car park, which is also scheduled for demolition apparently within the near future. It's only got a short lifespan. So that's another part of the agenda, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into, my responsibility doesn't relate to TTS and car parks, but I do know that there are plans to extend Green Street at some time in the future, because the actual car park itself is now approaching 30 years of age. And like a lot of the older buildings in Jersey, buildings that we built 30, 40 years ago are not being kept. I would think it would be hugely problematic to build a multi-storey in Snow Hill because of the restriction on width. It's difficult enough.
There are plans and it was approved. It has been approved in the past. It is feasible. There has been studies on it and it is feasible.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. What I would suggest to you is that the whole question of town parking is a question of how we manage the car in the future, and that's a much bigger issue. I think the issue is to try and get people out of cars. I'm not disagreeing with you. This is a site that is residential. The states made a decision to install, or to create a town park, the Millennium Town Park, in now 2009. And in order to create the car park, they have to move something like 400 cars. This, at the moment, appears to be the site that they're going to elect. As to what happens at the end of February, I'm not a gambling man.
But don't you see this is all part of the ghettoisation of St Helier?
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the ghettoisation of St Helier. I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with the idea that it should happen, or you don't agree that that's what's happening?
I don't agree that there is housing, both states rental housing and those in a private landlord control, that is not up to standard at the moment, and that is being worked on. The housing department spent this year? 25, last year 25 million. Spending another amount this year. The Cedars just finishing at 6 million. So
but we're talking
the
about
housing department is upgrading, and there is substandard accommodation here, but it is being upgraded.
But we're looking at housing, 70 units of our housing units here, and look at the state of it. I mean, is this partly to do with housing maintenance? Is this? You say it's not an issue of negligence.
No,
this is, and just across the road here we've got all sorts of states housing, which is in a similar state of disrepair, which is obviously going to be demolished in the fairly near future.
The housing department for many, many years had to finance rent rebate and rent abatement out of its own rental income, and it didn't have any income. The problem now, the issue now, is that they have income by selling houses, and the sale of houses will finance and repair accommodation like this. Not this one, because depending on what happens with Judy Martin's debate, this may stay or may be rebuilt for over 55s, or it may go. But the standard of accommodation is being upgraded, but the elephant in the room since 1992 has been that housing were not able to spend their rent.
But you live at St Bernard, you don't live in this area. Don't you think this, as Laura's been saying, this is such an intensive residential area? I mean, from my perspective, this ought to be a park, never mind a car park. And the Millennium Park, as proposed, the old gas place site, is surrounded virtually by commercial activities. That's an ideal centre to have a mixed use of car parking, small recreation park, and homes for retired people. It's an ideal opportunity to mix them all there together, and it will spread across the road to the Odeon site. The development is going to take place. There's a huge potential there for a properly organised development which takes into account all these factors, and this can be an asset to the island instead of becoming yet another sump.
Right, well, we're on the town centre outskirts. Just there we have commercial, we have 2 banks, we have a car park, we have the fish market, and we have all commercial, so we're within spitting distance of that. The centre of St Helier has got to be regenerated with a balance of residential, commercial, and keeping the retail. That is a huge issue, as you know. Some of it was referred to in the EDO report. In an ideal world, yes, we would have a town park and we would have residential here, but it's not my call. It's for the states to decide what they want to do in 2 weeks. It's not an ideal world. I find in politics is full of compromises.
Are you saying that housing, your minister, yourself, will only be concerned with housing issues? Because we hear from the minister that he's concerned with all sorts of planning issues on a general nature. Is that a luxury which is not available to you?
Well, we have 9 ministers who make ministerial decisions for and on behalf of the island. I'm not a minister, and I can't speak for my minister, but yes, as a States member I have a say, and when we get to vote on this, I will speak on this.
But you've disagreed with your minister on the reducing of the qualification period.
Yeah.
Are you going to disagree with him on this?
Well, there are ministers and assistant ministers who don't agree on certain things. There are precedents for that. And I think I respect him for his view and he respects me for my view. That's what makes the world go round. The worst thing that we could have in housing or any other States department would be people who don't have an independent view and are prepared to rattle cages.
Finally, would you want to have a say?
I'd just urge you when it comes to vote that really to look at the overall thing. I think Mike's actually has some very good points here, especially with potentially making a Millennium Park here instead of Gas Place. Look at the big picture. I know they've had all these traffic management studies and everything. I still do not believe that this is the right site for a car park. 800 cars trying to come through here every day. Think of the congestion for commuters. Think of the residents and the detrimental effect it's going to have on their life. And also think of the elderly and the over 55s and the ideal site for this for social housing. Please bear that in mind.
I do. I am bearing it in mind. And in my own parish, I fought 3 years ago when the States wanted to sell off the Bellevue site, which was an abandoned hospital project. It's now going to be accommodation for the over 55s, 46 units of accommodation for social rental for the over 55s. I feel very strongly about projects like this. I also feel strongly about the fact that this part of town, which is largely residential going this direction, doesn't have a town park, doesn't have any green of any kind. And I think that the town park was voted on, was approved, the funds are there, in spite of the credit crunch, in spite of the recession, in spite of the loss of the 2 floors of underground carpeting right across that site. I think that that town park must be produced and must be enabled in some way, shape or form. If we can find an alternate for cars in this part of town, which feeds in from St. Martin, St. Saviour, St. Clement and Trinity, we will. Do I do miracles? No. Would I like to find an ideal site? Yes. Have I reservations about demolishing Minden Place? Yes. Do I have reservations about spending more money on car parks? Yes. But there's a public demand out there for cars and car parks. And unfortunately, we are, to a large extent, we have to listen to what the public says, in spite of what some people think. And we'll have to listen to what Deputy Martin and other members say on the 23rd, I think it is, on the 24th.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks much indeed.
Thank you.